Okay, howdy folks. Just a quick recap on the rigid pendulum, and I also play blasting your work and some basics just in case there are any disruptions. As you well know, there is a strike going on right now, and so in anticipation of potential problems, I'm just leaving some stuff for you to look at in case anything disrupts our ability to work today. So I'm going to jump right into it. Share my screen, maybe. Come on, baby. There we go. Sure. All right, so you should see the Maya user interface up on the screen right now. So I'm going to go ahead and go through all of the steps of the rigid pendulum, and you can rewatch this. So here I've got a file, new scene. I'm going to go File, Save Scene As, and I'm going to name it my last names underscore my first name underscore RP for rigid pendulum 00, like that. And that's just going to be the starting scene that I start with. Then I'm going to go File to my reference editor, and I'm going to create a reference, and I'm going to reference in that rigid pendulum that I've downloaded. Now that rigid pendulum is located in the content folder of the class. So let me show you where that is. Link. Let's see here. So here's our class page. Here, one. I go to content, and I go to rigs, and there's that rigid pendulum rig, and I'm going to download that. And that rig I put in my assets folder because this is something that I'm going to use over and over again. And so let's see here. Inside my assets folder. Let's try this. Rigid pendulum rig. There we go. I'm going to reference that in. Continue. Okay, so there's the rigid pendulum scene. Bring it up there. And over here, this display layer allows me to toggle selectability of geometry. So if I turn that off now, I can select that geometry and hit 3 to do smoothing on the geometry. And then I just click here again, and now it's unselectable. I'm going to go to my panel, orthographic, side view, because we're play blasting this from the side when we're done. I'm going to check my resolution gate, set up my framing on the scene. So here's my pendulum, nice and large in frame, and then I'm going to lock down that camera. And I believe I want it to move over about 3-4 body lengths. So I'm actually just going to have a teensy bit more room like that. There we go. Okay, so the animation for this scene is 120 frames long. So I'm going to click in here and hit enter. And that's going to let me set my scene length. And I can also click on that and go 120 so that my time view slider is set to the full length of the scene. So here I scrub along, there's no animation. I'm going to go and do a couple little preferences things. I'm going to click on this time slider preferences. One of the things I'm going to make sure is that my playback speed is not set to play every frame, but rather 24 FPS times 1. I want it to play back in real time. So I am going to remind you that what you see on the timeline and in the channel box is based on what you have selected. So a left mouse button click here is going to select that controller. And you'll see the name of the controller and all the channels for the controller. S to key is going to allow me to set a key on that controller. And then I'm going to go to frame 24, and I'm going to just move that character over by hitting the W key, move them over here about yay far, and hit S to key again. And so now I've got an animation on the body of the pendulum moving it over. I'm going to go to my graph editor here, and I created this little button by going Window, Animation Editor, Graph Editor, and I hold down Control and Shift and left mouse button click. And when I do that, you're going to see a button appear right here on the shelf. So I'm going to go Animation Editor, Graph Editor, Control and Shift, and left mouse button click, and there's that button. So now anytime I want to access my graph editor, I can just click that button, right click to delete that because I've already got it right here. I did the same thing with my outliner in case I ever want to see what stuff is in the scene. Sometimes your outliner will be docked in your interface. And so if you click on the tab, you can just tear that off. So I'm going to launch my graph editor here. I'm going to select the main controller, and be aware sometimes people do this when they go to select, and they're actually grabbing both the tail and the main body. So when you grab this main body, just make sure you grab over here. And I don't need any of this, these other keys. So I can left mouse button click and control to select all these names here. And I'm just going to right click in the blue space and say delete to get rid of everything except the translate Z, which is the part that I'm interested in. I'm going to left mouse button click on that key. And sometimes it happens where you'll have curves or keys or something turned off here in your graph editors. And you're sort of like, hey, I'm trying to select it and I can't. And it could just be that maybe one of these options are turned off. And so you just need to click it. So I'm going to select this key and then I'm going to grab the handle of the key and just pull it up. And if you try and move it and you can't, just remember you got to be in like move mode or rotate mode or something like that to be able to manipulate those things. So I'm just going to select the key, left mouse button click, and then move that handle up. Now, if I middle mouse click just anywhere in the screen, it'll allow me to do it, or I can left mouse button click on the handle itself to manipulate it. And I just want that curve to look like it starts really slow, speeds up, and then comes to a hard stop. That's the animation that we need on the body to meet the expectation of the assignment. And that's it. I've already got the body animation done. Boom. Now, we're going to be using a tool called BH Ghost, and you can see it here. And if you launch BH Ghost and you have like an animation controller selected, you might see it creates this piece of garbage geometry in here because BH Ghost has to use geometry. It can't use a NURBS curve. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. What I want to do, and I'm going to say clear all here, I'm going to select the ball of the pendulum. And if I can't do it, I got to go like this, grab that ball of the pendulum, and I'm going to say add selected meshes. I can also do it by having the geometry selected and launching BH Ghost, and it will automatically load it in there. Now, how do we get BH Ghost showing up on our shelf? That tool, just like the rig, was downloaded from the class folder under scripts. We go ahead and download that BH Ghost, and it's a zip file. And so I'm going to do that right now, download. And then I'm going to go to my downloads folder here. And so there's that BH Ghost that I downloaded. And I'm going to go to downloads here, and I'm going to right click on it and say extract all to get it out of there. And I'm just going to say, just put it right at the downloads folder like that, extract. And so now I've got BH Ghost there, and there's bhghost.mel and a couple of icons. I'm going to take that bhghost.mel, and you may have your folder view options set so that you don't see the suffixes of files. So you just want to make sure that file names extensions are turned on in your navigator windows for Windows. Otherwise, if I turn that off, I'll just see BH Ghost. I won't see what kind of file it is, although here it says it's mel file because I have details on. So I always like to turn on view and show and make sure you have file name extensions turned on. So I'm going to take that Ghost, BH Ghost mel, and I'm just going to cut it from here. Blink, cut. And I'm going to go to my documents, Maya, and go into scripts. And that's where I place that BH Ghost. I put it right there. I want it there. Right there. Now that I've got it in that folder, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to, you can do this in the script editor, or you can do it down at the bottom of your Maya where this mel window is. If you see it, you can just type REHASH for rehash to just say, hey, Maya, there's something new. You should go and have a look. Enter, and then lowercase BH, capital GHOST, and whoops, BHG, like that. BH Ghost, enter, and it will launch the tool. Now I don't want to have to type that in every time. So in order to get it up on the shelf, I'm just going to go like this, BHGHOST, and I'm going to left mouse button click and drag to select that text, and then middle mouse click and hold and release to drop it onto my shelf and tell Maya, yeah, it's a mel script. And there's that new button that when I click on it, it launches BH Ghost. Now I'll show you later how to get those pretty icons showing up with those buttons. But for now, as long as you've got a button that allows you to run the command, and all it is a button that says BH Ghost, and it'll launch that script. So I've got my BH Ghost on my shelf. I select the geometry, launch BH Ghost, and then if I go here at frame 1, and I make sure in my viewport menu under show, I have viewport, I make sure I have strokes turned off. Now I tend to have everything turned off except the stuff I'm looking at. So I tend to do show none, show viewport, and I'm going to click this double line with my left mouse button to tear that menu off for a second. I want to see polygons, I want to see NURBS curves, and I want to see strokes. Everything else I don't care about. I still want to see, selection, highlighting, manipulators, all that stuff. I want to keep all that stuff turned on, but everything else I leave turned off. So I'm going to go ahead and click Ghost, and it will draw this line around the ball. And you can decide what color you want that to be. But I'm just going to keep it at default. So I'm going to draw a line where it first starts off, and I'm going to select the tail, and I'm going to hit S to key on frame 1. So here you can see the keys on my body. When I select the body, there's my 2 keys. Now that I've got the tail, I can see my key there at the beginning. I'm going to scrub a little bit ahead. I'm just going to go to like frame 14, say, maybe. And I'm going to rotate this in X. And because this tail is really heavy, it has a sense of mass, it wants to stay where it was. So that body takes off, but the tail is like, no, I just want to stay here. And so that ball is thinking about where it was previously. Now, I don't want it to swing back in anticipation like this. So I'm going to open up my graph editor with that tail selected, and I'm going to frame up, F to frame up. And I'm just going to grab this key here and move it like that so that it stays in that spot. So now as the body takes off, that ball tries to stay in the same spot. Now this takeoff starts to fling it up in the air. So it means the tail, that ball is moving up, and because it's a massive object, it has inertia, it's actually going to shoot higher than that. So I'm going to probably put a key, I don't know, maybe about here, where it sort of goes even higher. But gravity is pulling constantly, so it's going to start pulling down, which means by frame 24, it'll probably be down a little bit more like this. We have that initial takeoff where it gets flung up in the air, and then it starts to swing back down again. And whenever you want, you can just use your time slider selection and sort of isolate the area that you're playing and just go, okay, let me see what that first bit looks like. Does it feel good? Does it feel like it flings up enough? Feels nice and heavy? Yeah, I might tweak that just a teensy bit higher. Let's see, you look like you need to be there. You just a little bit more. How's that look? There, that feels pretty good. Okay, so let's continue to the next part. And I can also tweak that in the graph editor. So if I hit A to frame all, go like this, like that. There we go. Pretty happy with that. Make sure that tail is staying right where it is. I'm going to use a buffer curve snapshot. So I'll just pull my graph editor out here for a second. Come here, graph editor window. So there's that buffer curve snapshot. So this dark gray line, it basically records the current position of your curve. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to take a picture of it just so that I can return to it if I ever want. So if I change something and I liked what I had better before, I can just say, hey, swap with the buffer curve, go back to what I had before. And so that's what that buffer curve is useful for. If you don't see your buffer curve, just go View and Show Buffer Curves. Okay, so there's my initial takeoff. And now what's interesting is I'm going to do a ghost here at 23, 24, and then 25 when the body stops. This tail, it's going to want to keep going at the same speed it was before because it has inertia. Plus, gravity is going to actually accelerate a teeny bit. So it might even go a little bit further than that. So I want to make sure that the tail, it's moving along, starting to accelerate because gravity is pulling down. Tweak this just a teeny bit like that-ish. Take you just like that-ish. So hit Ghost to redraw those positions. There you go. So you can see they're overlapping here, less overlap, just barely touching. So it's accelerating towards the bottom. And then it's going to swing through, I don't know, let's see. I'm going to do like this, and I'm going to swing it all the way through like that. And then I'm going to go back to my graph editor, and I'm just going to tweak my tangent handles there. So it wants to keep going sort of at the same pace. I'm going to say, pull you up like that. Let's see what that first part looks like. So I'm just going to isolate on my range slider just to 35. And I'm going to say bust all to get rid of all my ghosts because I don't need them. Let's see. Does that look like it swings up enough? Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's pretty appropriate. I'm going to open up my range slider to open up a larger section. So if it goes from sort of, I don't know, it looks like here it's close to 0. Here it's a little bit past. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm going to give it another 10 frames to swing back in the other direction, but it's not going to swing as high. So first 10 frames will get me back down to the center because it was sort of 10 frames from here to there. So it'll be 10 frames back down to the center, and then another 10 frames back to like here. So you can see it's not quite as high on this side as it was on that side because gravity is going to be draining some of that energy away. And so I want it to swing a little bit less each time. And let's go back into the graph editor, and I'm just going to grab this handle here because I want lots of ease in and ease out at the apex of those swings to make this tail look really heavy. Like that. Let's see how that looks. And again, I use my range slider again to sort of just isolate the part that I'm playing with. Click. Feels like it swings back a little fast. So I'm going to move some of my keys. I'm going to give them a little bit more time. I'm going to say instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, let's give it 12 frames. I'm going to move it 1, 2. And the way I move those keys is I left mouse button click and hold down shift on the timeline to select that range. And then once it's highlighted like that, I can middle mouse click on it and then move it wherever I want. I can also move it in the graph editor just by going and clicking on that key. And if I hold down shift and middle mouse click, that'll allow me to move it just in time. Or if I hold down shift and middle mouse click and move up and down, it'll move just in value. So I can sort of control that as well. So I can go like this, grab that tangent handle, pull that down because I don't want it overshooting. It comes back like that. Same with this guy. Let's see. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 to the middle. And I'm just going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I'm just going to drop him at 62. So it's shift left mouse button click and then middle mouse drag to 62. There we go. And that moves that there. And so let's use our range slider to isolate just that section. Hit play again. Boom, boom. Might be a little slow. Select that tail. You can see my keys aren't there on the timeline. Select that tail. Now I can see my keys. So I'm going to move them back just 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Now I can also move groups of keys. So let me show you that. So let's say I want to move this guy 1, and I want to keep the relationship the same. So I'm going to shift and left mouse button click and drag to select this entire region. Then middle mouse click in the center there and go 1. And then I'm going to go grab you guys 1 and grab you 1. Or I could do it in the graph editor, move them back and forth like that. Let's see how that looks. Isolate my range slider again. Hit play. Now the tail is breaking frame a little bit, so I'm just going to recompose my camera a tiny bit. I'm going to unlock that camera, and I'm just holding down Alt and right mouse button to move in and out, or Alt and left mouse button, or Alt and middle mouse button to sort of pan and dolly, or boom and track. Let's see. Yeah, I want to get as close as I possibly can. There we go. That keeps them in frame. And you know what? I don't mind if it breaks frame a little bit. That's fine. More important to me that it's nice and close. Yeah, that's fine. There we go. Let's see what that looks like. So let's play. Boom, boom. There we go. Now, you could duplicate exactly what I've got here as long as you had the exact same distance on the pendulum, the exact same sort of swing on the tail, and you would probably get pretty close, which is one of the reasons why I don't share this demo material until you've already attempted it yourself, because part of it is playing around with the timing. Now, there's one last little reminder that I want to share. Uh, we talked about sort of changing speed and things like that, but I wanted to make it a little clearer. So I'm going to go ahead and on the blog, you'll see this on our next time, it's the bouncing balls. There's this little image here called what to do when it's. And so the idea of this image is we're talking about distance, speed, and time. Distance, speed, time. And the three are interrelated. So for example, 60 miles an hour is a speed, which means I am going 60 miles, which is a distance, in 1 hour, which is a time, which tells me my speed. Now, if I slow down to half speed, I would only travel 30 miles in an hour, or it would take me 2 hours to make that same journey. So those three things are interconnected: distance, speed, and time. So often when you're looking at your animation, it's hard to know what to do. But if you can tell if it's too fast or it's too slow, then it tells you you either need to, for example, the thing I'm looking at is just going too quickly. Okay, well, I either need to have it travel less distance and that'll slow it down, or I need to give it more time to make that journey. And that will also slow it down. Or I can do a combination of both. If you look at some bit of your action and it's like, oh, this is way too slow, I need it to go quicker. Well, you can make it travel farther in the same number of frames. That will also speed it up. Or you could reduce the number of frames you're giving it, give it less time to make that same journey, and it will also speed up. So as long as you look at something and you go, okay, well, this bit is too fast or too slow, then it's really obvious what it is you need to do to fix it. So that understanding of how distance, speed, and time are interconnected will make it easier for you to revise your animation. So when I was looking at my pendulum swing, for example, and I was like, it's a little quick, I just added some frames because I knew the distance it traveled, I was happy with. So if I wanted it to slow down, I then had to change the time. I had to give it more frames. And then when I watched it, I was like, oh, you know what? I think I slowed it down a little too much. But I was happy with how far it was swinging. So I just decreased the amount of time that I had, and that sped it up again a little bit. So 2 frames was too many. 1 frame was just enough. And so there we go. Now that I've got that first swing, I can go through and set all of my other keys based on that same time, because the period or the time of a swing for a pendulum, it is the same no matter how far it's swinging. Although here's a little trick. Truthfully, although we know that from physics, that the period of a pendulum is fixed on a rigid pendulum, it doesn't look quite right if every swing is the same amount of time. So I find that I also tend to end up shaving up a couple of frames on the smaller swings, and it starts to feel about right. So play around with it, see where you don't want it to feel like it's a spring or anything like that, or it has a life of its own. You just want it to feel like a nice, heavy sort of swinging metal pendulum with a rigid arm. And so using my range slider here, I'm just going to isolate the bit that I want. Now, when I've got it working out, so let's say this is my entire animation, and I'm like, yep, okay, it's working. I want to show this to Dave. I'm going to show you how to play blast it. So play blasting is just about outputting a movie file. Now, on the computers at the school, if you right click on the timeline and go to Play Blast option box, you probably won't see this option, Format QT. You'll see AVI or image. So I'm going to do AVI, and I'm going to use most of these codecs are pretty garbage, but I'll use MS Cram, and I want to make sure it's 100 quality, 100 scale. You can just go custom and type 1920 by 1080, which is the size we want, or you can do from render settings and then go up to your render settings window here, this little gear with the clapper board. Click that, and that's going to pull up your render settings. And if you scroll down here, HD 1080 or full HD, I think, is 1920 by 1080 as well. So if you set it to that, close, from render settings, we'll also do 1920 by 1080. You can see it grayed out there. That's what it's going to be. You want to make sure that you have view turned on, show ornaments, render off screen. I do when we start to work with heavier stuff, but you can leave that off if you want to watch the play blast unfold so you can see it happening in real time. But make sure you have that turned on if you want it to be a little quicker. The most important thing, save to file. You want to save this out as something, and I'm going to call it Latour underscore David underscore RP for rigid pendulum. And I'm going to browse just to see where it's going to put it. It's going to put it in my default project, or the project that I've set to right now. You can see I'm actually set to my cloud-based storage drive. But if I went here and just said, hey, set it to my default, movies, drop it right in there, call it Latour David. Oops. Got to pay attention to capitals and lowercase, RP, like that. I'm going to say save and play blast. Now, one of the other things I'm going to do just to make it a little nicer. So here's my AVI. Oh, interesting. I forgot to turn off my resolution gate and I forgot to turn off my animation controls. So I'm going to say show and I'm going to say play blast display. I'm going to say override viewport and viewport, or sorry, play blast display. I'm going to tear that off for a second. I'm going to say none. And I'm going to say, I just want to see polygons. That's all I want to see. Everything else can be turned off. Okay. And so now, regardless of what I have on my screen when I go to Play Blast, it will turn those things off. So I'm going to try that again. Play Blast, and I don't need to click the options because I know what they're set to. Okay. It's going to Play Blast through. And now let's see. There we go. So there is my correctly framed scene with my pendulum in there playing. And so if I go to my default projects folder, so that's documents, Maya, projects, default, movies, there's that AVI. Now, to hand it off to Dave, I need to convert it. I can open it with Adobe Media Converter to convert it into an MOV or an MP4. Typically, I use MOV, but I'm going to open up Media Encoder here for a second and show you this. Now, if you follow the instructions on the Play Blasting tab, so before I show you the conversion process, oh, goodness me. Right, I gotta pause. Let's see here. Stop share for a second. Okay, sharing my screen again. Sorry, I just had to log into Adobe there for a second. So there's my movie file, my AVI. I went open with here and went to Adobe Media Encoder, launching Media Encoder, and there. So there it is in my queue. And I'm just going to set the options to H.264 and match source. And it's going to give me an MP4. And I'm going to drop it in the exact same place. So I just hit Start Queue, and it will turn that into an MP4. So if I click here on the AVI, you'll see the file size. It's 17.5 megabytes. When I click on the MP4, 380 kilobytes. It's a much smaller file size, which makes it much quicker to hand off. And you can see there's no visual difference in terms of compression. So once I have got that work finished, if I want feedback from Dave, I just go Evaluations, Submissions, and I go to the in-class handoff folder and I submit it there. And any work that's in there, I can add to the Sync Sketch, or alternatively, I can upload it to Sync Sketch myself, email Dave a link saying, hey, can you send me some feedback on this work? You can do that. So that is the bullet tour of animating the rigid pendulum and play blasting your work. Using BH Ghost, everything you need to know to be able to do this assignment. So if you were sort of struggling, you need some recap, that's the whole spiel. Hope this helped, and I hope it goes well getting into the school. Obviously, trying to work in a computer program, where we're using hardware all the time, and we have no IT people because they're all on strike. This is really an untenable situation. So I'd also encourage you to please write to your Minister of Parliament, write to Doug Ford, write to the college's employer council, and let them know, hey, you'd like this resolved. Please get back to the negotiating table, come to an agreement, get our support staff back in the classroom so Dave can do what he does, so we can do what we do, and everybody can continue learning, which is what we're actually interested in doing. Thanks very much for your support. Be sure to wave to the folks on the pickets lines and tell them that you share their support, and hope that it's all resolved soon. Thanks very much, and I'll see y'all in class.